So should we be doing more? Joining us now to discuss are Rob Lyons, the Science and Technology Director at the Institute of Ideas, and Jonathon Bartley, who's the co-leader of the Green Party. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. Rob, if I can start with you, seems like if us being encouraged to recycle more can only be good for the planet. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think there's two problems with compulsory recycling. The first is there are practical issues, especially if people live in blocks of flats and things like that. And whether it's actually effective. But there's also a sort of a scientific issue as well, because while people talk about recycling and helping to save the planet, actually the effect of household recycling is very trivial. And actually the real big issues in terms of tackling environmental problems have to be done at a sort of national and governmental level in terms of changing the way our energy system works, for example. From what I can work out, about 1% of Britain's greenhouse gas emissions are saved by household recycling, which is trivial, and increasing the rate of household recycling won't make very much difference to the planet.
OK, Rob. Jonathon, let me put that to you. 1% of household recycling. That sounds like we shouldn't really be doing it at all. It's pointless.
I think people involved in the £6.8 billion industry in this country, all their jobs, all the industry that relies on recycled materials, all those people that are trying to promote a circular economy would disagree with Rob. But of course, he's right in one respect, and that is that we need to be looking to reduce the amount of waste packaging. We need to make those businesses that are being irresponsible and making us all subsidise their poor practice. We need to make them incentivised to be better. We need to also reuse a bottle scheme where you get a deposit back on your bottles would be a great way forward. We've seen the huge impact that the recent introduction of the charges for plastic bags has had. Billions of plastic bags have been taken out of circulation, and that's had a huge impact. So let's introduce a bottle return scheme and let's incentivise businesses to make the right decisions. But then, in terms of recycling, let's make sure that our recycling is consistent. Let's not have this failure of political leadership, and let's make it absolutely clear there is a failure of political leadership around this. We are going to, our recycling rate went down last year for the first time in years, whereas Germany are hitting things like 60%. OK, Jonathon, I could see, Rob, I could see you shaking your head saying bottle scheme is just not going to work, according to you.
Well, I just think that this is kind of like dealing with the very, very marginal issues and expending an awful lot of sort of political and intellectual energy on such triviality.
But is it not somewhere to start, Rob? Should we not set an example ourselves by doing this? Is it not a starting point that we can do more?
Well, I think there is a large degree of virtue signalling around recycling, that people parade the fact that they recycle or talk about the fact that they recycle just to confirm that they're good citizens. But if you want to deal with the practical issue of environmental problems, then you have to have a much more ambitious outlook about these things. And what we need is, for example, reliable, low-carbon energy sources. At the moment, we don't have them. We have low-carbon energy sources that are unreliable, or we have reliable, mostly fossil fuel energy sources. So we need to invest big style in changing that situation and getting new forms of energy sorted out. A glass recycling scheme or bottle return scheme is just nonsense as a way of dealing with these problems.
OK, Rob. Jonathon, complete nonsense.
Again, absolutely we need to invest in renewable energy. We should be a world leader in that. £30 billion subsidy for Hinkley is such a waste of money, nuclear power, when we could be investing in a renewable energy revolution, rejuvenating our offshore economy and our offshore renewables.
So in that case, Jonathon, it shouldn't be compulsory for households. There's no point, really, because it's such a negligible effect. So why attack the people when we should be, as you said previously, of course, we should be attacking the sort of global corporations?
I mean, we've got to do all of it. We have to be investing in renewable energy. We have to be reducing what we produce, but we have to be pragmatic. And, the idea that we can just bury our head in the sand and say, well, let's send it all to landfill. It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't make environmental sense to send it all to landfill. Let's, do things right across the board. Let's reduce, reuse, and let's recycle. Let's create those resilient circular economies which create really, really good jobs that make a greener, more pleasant environment. And let's move forward together. It isn't an either or, it's a both and. And, the idea that we should be reducing this to a binary decision discussion about recycling is frankly pretty ridiculous.
OK, Rob, according to Our Ocean campaign, a truckload of rubbish, of plastic rubbish, is tipped into the ocean every single minute. A lot of that will be household plastics. Is it not good that we should potentially be made to recycle those plastics when you see a statistic like that, things that we eat strawberries and blueberries out of are ending up in the ocean and then they end up in our food?
Well, I mean, there is a question, a more sort of prosaic question about litter, and I'm not in favour of litter, and I think that litter should be dealt with. And that's why I am slightly worried about councils taking 3 weeks to deal with landfill bins, because I think that that's something that could eventually end up encouraging more litter. Yes, of course we should throw things away properly, but frankly, if a plastic bag ends up in a landfill rather than in a recycling plant, it shouldn't make any difference if things are done properly. And an interesting quirk to this discussion is that people talk about landfill as if it's throwing something away forever. Actually, 9% of Britain's renewable energy, what's classified as renewable energy, comes from landfill gas. So we are getting use out of the materials that end up in landfill. I think we should be much more open-minded about how we deal with waste and see what gives us the best cost-benefit of getting back some of the resources that we put in, as it were, while at the same time not overly burdening people with inconvenient household recycling schemes and expensive recycling plants, etc., if they're not actually making a huge difference to the environmental outcomes.
OK, Jonathan, just on the specific issue of should it be compulsory for local councils to make us recycle, what do you think?
I don't think that using the stick is a very effective way of doing it. And you look at places like South Oxfordshire, where they alternate. 1 week they do recycling and food, the next week they do your normal waste that would otherwise go to landfill. That's a very good way of doing it. It's about education. It's about a coherent strategy right across the board. If you look at places like Scotland and Wales, where these issues are devolved down to the Parliament and the Assembly, they're doing much, much better than we are. Actually, our recycling rate is less than places like South Korea. You have to look at places like Germany, Belgium, which have got really, really good schemes in place. There are many, many models, but they're consistent models which roll out programs which people understand, which people are clear about. They have that local leadership and they have that national leadership on it. And this is really a failure of governmental leadership. We could be so much better. We need the political will to excel in all these areas. The idea that Rob said about plastic bags can be recycled, actually they can't, and that's why they go to landfill. Yes, we have to put stuff in landfill, but let's put it there and let's dig it up again when we have the technology to be able to recycle, so at least those things aren't lost. There's a way of doing these things much more effectively, but the answer is not to ditch recycling. The answer is to get better right across the board.
And just on Rob's point there, Jonathan, about the government maybe shouldn't be demonising landfill that much, and we can actually get a lot of renewable energy out of that. That's something I didn't know. Should we be pushing that a bit more?
I don't think using landfill as a source of renewable energy is a good policy goal. Inevitably, you've got to work with what you've got. The reality is that what goes into landfill could be recycled, and it's better to recycle first as much as we possibly can before putting it in the landfill, clearly, and then having to dig it up again at a later date if we think we can, recycling it as technology moves forward. So we do need to be pushing up our recycling rates, absolutely, but we need to have coherent policies, consistent policies, using incentivising local communities. Everyone really wants to recycle, so let's give them the financial incentives. And I think we're moving towards a situation where we're willing to kind of pay for the energy we use, pay for the water we use, but at the local level it's a very blunt instrument the local authorities have. They have to charge kind of one-off council tax regardless of whether a household recycles and is responsible or isn't. And so we need to give more powers to local authorities to be able to implement schemes that do take account of what's actually going on.
OK, Rob, last word to you. What should households be doing to try and make a difference then?
Well, I mean, for me, if you want to make a difference on these issues at a household level, and I'm not sure that you can make a huge difference at a household level, then doing things like using public transport or turning down your thermostat by a degree will probably do more. And if councils want to encourage us to, in terms of waste, encourage us, then there are better ways of doing it. I think Jonathan hinted at it, but incentive schemes actually work much better, it would seem, than carrot and stick and having people snooping in your bins. So encourage people, educate people, and incentivise them. That's a much better way forward, I think, than slapping more fines on people, which I think is just going to cause antagonism.
OK, Rob, Jonathan, thank you very much. And you can get involved with Sky's Ocean Rescue campaign by visiting skyoceanrescue.com. You can also follow that campaign on Facebook and Twitter.